Well, it has been a while. And by a while, I mean about 11 months. In that time, the layout has more or less gone through a transformation at least twice. The last time we talked, you might remember this area here. Well, first off, everything was pink. Nothing was painted yet. But there was a small hill over in this corner with this house on it. That's obviously changed. Believe it or not, it didn't go from that to this. There was a mountain here. An honest-to-God mountain. I swear to God, it was probably this tall. It took this entire area. And in hindsight, it was more of an opportunity for me to prove to myself that I could do hard shell scenery, that is plaster cloth over a frame. It was more of an idea to prove it to myself that I could do it. And if I had a model railroad 4 times the size that I do, it would have worked 100%. But it completely and totally overwhelmed this entire side of the railroad. It was almost kind of comical. So that didn't even get a top layer of plaster on it. Didn't even get painted. It sat there for about 3 months, and I hated it within minutes of finishing it. So it came out, and now we're here. So my plan for this area is more or less to keep it the way it is now, geography speaking. Final placement of buildings is obviously up to interpretation. This area, I think I'd mentioned possibly putting a residential area here. That's not going to happen. I'm going to frame this all in with barbed wire fence, and it's going to be cows or horses, one of the two. And it'll be part of this farm. So that's where that's going. You'll notice my rails are painted. I went ahead and I went and got 2 of the new Woodland Scenics Tidy Track pins. And I gotta tell you, they do work. What you hear is true though. Those tips do not last long on those paint pens. The tie plates chew them up really quickly and turn them into mush. Luckily, I was smart, and aside from the extra tip they give you when you buy the pens, I had some extra tips on hand for some other paint markers that I had for other projects that just happened to fit. So I ended up using 1 pin for the entire main line and about 1/4 of a pin for my sidings. I used the rusty rail for the sidings, and then I used the railroad rail standard iron color for the main line. And they worked really well. I did that in an afternoon. I did notice I had to do a couple of coats to really get the color to darken up. But again, still beats the crap out of using a micro brush and a bottle of Floquil by a lot. So those worked really well. So yeah, this area is different. You'll notice the grain elevator's not here. I elected to do this because it just felt more rural, more Montana-esque, if that makes any sense. I actually eliminated a good amount of buildings, about half of them actually, from the last time that you saw a video from me. And the reason I did that was because there was just not a lot of layout, but a lot of population density, or at least portrayed population density. By that I mean there was just too many buildings on the railroad to make it convincing that we're modeling rural Montana. So some buildings went away, but some stayed, and I actually added a couple of smaller ones that I felt just really kind of painted a better picture. This is one of them. Originally this office was supposed to be a bar, and I decided, you know what, that's just not going to work. We're not even going to have a town on our railroad. We're going to have little oddball places here and there, but no real defined town. So that's kind of where we're going with this area. But overall, I'm really happy with how this area has come out. Moving on, though, this is kind of the biggest change. This area, the last time we talked, had 2 bridges. There was a double track bridge here and a single girder bridge in the back. I was really racking my brain for a while because it created a division point. There was this half of the model railroad, which we'll talk about in a couple seconds, and then there was this part. And there really didn't seem to be a good way to blend the 2 halves together. No matter what I did, it always felt like 2 different railroads mashed together. And the river was the problem. So I said, you know what? Let's fill it all back in. But then I started thinking, and I said, you know, I do really want some water features on here, even if they're very small. So we went with this. And this culvert is actually HO scale. So it's twice the size it should be. But I bought the N-scale one first, and it just looked comically small for the area. So I bought the HO scale at the advice of my wife, very smart. And it works a lot better. I'm very happy with the size now. It's not too big, not too small. The back part will get the same treatment the front half has gotten. And eventually this will be all overgrown with weeds and brush, tall grass, static grass. There will be some water in this deeper part here, the little trench that I made. And by the way, your fingers are the best tool ever for really making convincing drainage ditches. So that's kind of what's going to happen here. I'm going to do some old rusty 55-gallon drums in here, and you know, some fallen brush and branches, some discarded railroad ties, raccoons. It's going to be a really good drainage ditch scene. It's going to look really good when I'm done with it. Now let's talk about this, because this is vastly different from the last time we talked. Last time we talked, this was all flat in this whole area here up front. And, you know, I put a lot of different things in this spot. I put houses here. I had that feed mill here for a while. I even had a grain elevator here at first. And my issue with it was just, it was an odd-shaped piece of land, and I couldn't really place anything here that looked natural. And one of my YouTubers that I watch a lot is Steve Brown, with That's My Railroad, and he had made a comment at one point of he was going to just scenic over the top of the spots that he wasn't sure about, and if he had an idea that came to him later, he'd rip it out and do it then. And that really spoke to me. So I just scenicked over it. I just went ahead and said, hey, you know what, screw it. We're going to put some topography in here. We're going to match the other side of the railroad tracks and, you know, create this very nice cut that actually really looks nice. I mean, with the curvature of the main line, watching a train snake through this little cut bank is actually really enjoyable. So I'm actually very grateful that I did it. Eventually, maybe in the future, something will come to me that I want here more than just more terrain. But until that happens, I'm really happy with this. Moving on, you'll also notice that the yard is gone. Now we just have a double track main line with a crossover. The issue with the yard was that it just took way too much real estate. It made the layout look comically small. There was so much train to so little railroad that it made the whole railroad look small. So, you know, I put some cars into storage, I ripped out all of that, and now we have this nice sweeping, flowing curve that the train snakes through. And we have the ability to run 2 trains without any trouble. I can take these off and put them into a off-site yard, if you will, which is actually just a storage bin, and switch things out, and I frequently do. And it's kind of nice because then I just tell myself, well, that other train that's in storage is actually on another railroad or in a different part of Montana that we aren't modeling. And it works really well, so that's where we're at with that. You'll notice we just got the grain elevator here. I've kind of done some, I guess, kit bashing, if you will. This building does not come from this kit. This building actually came from that concrete grain silo that I had that is no longer on the railroad. But I liked the building so much that I kept it. And I was like, you know what, heck with it, it's going with the other grain elevator. These 3D printed corn bins, they came from Lombard Hobbies. They're an exclusive from them, and I absolutely love the way they look with the whole scene. I think it just really looks good. This little empty grass patch here is eventually going to have some abandoned cars sitting in it, some rusty old junk cars or something like that. So that's something I'm working on. Back over this way, we've got the Rail Fans Paradise, aka the shack next to the train tracks. Sit on your front deck and watch trains go by. Eventually, this mountain over here will get a a full rock face on the front of it. I've just kind of got a few sitting there. And those rocks are actually Woodland Xenix Ready rocks, the pre-made, pre-cast, pre-colored ones. I tried making my own rocks the traditional way with the molds and the plaster, and I gotta tell you, it's just not something that I want to spend a lot of time on. I tried it, didn't like it, couldn't get the effect that I wanted, so I went ahead and said, heck with it. I'm just gonna buy the pre-made ones, and I'm grateful that I did, because they look really good. They got great color on them. All you gotta do is figure out where you're gonna put them and slap them on there, and you're done. So that was a good call. They're a little expensive, true, but I feel like, you know, if you have a small railroad like I do, your money goes a little bit goes a little bit further than it would if you had, you know, a giant, you know, 40-foot long Mondo layout. You know, someday I think I'll probably have one of those, but for right now, this is where I'm at, and this just makes sense for me. Over here, you'll notice we've got the feed mill. This is where the grain silo used to sit. And now we've got the feed mill sitting over here, and that looks horrible. Good Lord. I like the scene a lot. I'm super happy with this. This is how this is going to stay, for sure. You know, I've got my track pretty well ballasted in there, and there's actually a 1/4 of an inch drop between the main line and this section, and I actually kind of like that grade. It creates a really interesting effect. When you look down there, you just kind of see, you know, it's a little bit higher. But yeah, so that's just kind of where that's at, and eventually this will all be scenic too the rest of the way. I got to redo my roads. They came out okay, but I don't like how much higher the roads are in certain spots versus the track. And it should be the opposite way, honestly. The track should be just a little bit higher and the road should be a little bit lower. So I'm going to probably tear all that out and redo it. But in the interim, it looks okay. So yeah, here's where we're at. Gotta tell you, when I last spoke to you guys, I was kind of going through writer's block as far as my creativity is concerned. I really just didn't know what I wanted to do. And the railroad sat pretty much untouched for, gosh, well, the last time we talked, about 11 months. I didn't really do anything after that point. This has all been within the last 2 months or so. Going back to Montana and going to Glacier National Park really reinvigorated my love for Montana and showed me that, you know, originally I had said I was modeling geographically the area of Paradise and Plains, Montana, those two towns. And when we were on vacation at Glacier, my wife said, you know, instead of focusing on that exact area and trying to make a recreation of that, why don't you make your railroad a love letter to Montana? Get the feel of Montana, not just a snapshot of it. And at first I was like, oh yeah, sure, whatever. But honestly, that is what I have done. And I'm grateful for her advice, because I don't think I'd be where I am if she hadn't said that. So, you guys, if your wife gives you advice on your model railroad, just try it. Sometimes it's really great advice. So, yeah. We'll see where we go from here. I have plans to kind of keep working on this and just kind of keep chugging along. I find it ironic that I did the scenery in the middle of the railroad instead of starting at one definitive end. But this gives me the mojo to keep going. Because I look at this and I say, you know what? I can do this. I can definitely do this. So let's just see where it goes. And if you've managed to stay with me for the past 14.5 minutes, I'm very grateful. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, let me know. If you have any critiques or any ideas, any feedback at all, I'd love to hear it. I love talking with other modelers and getting ideas. That's how the hobby continues to grow and how our techniques and skills evolve. So definitely here for it. Definitely want to talk. So leave a like and a comment if you want to. Otherwise, just enjoy the video. But that's all I've got for you for right now. So thanks for watching.